So good evening, everyone. So first of all, very glad to host this. I think it's the last panel of today's All the Metaverse Forum, and I'm very honorable to host this roundtable. So briefly introduce myself. My name is Julie Chen. I'm the Vice President of Shanghai G20 Young Entrepreneurs Alliance Talent Program. I'm also a student at Korea University, and now I'm running a pivotal venture capital and also a consulting startup. So I've heard that for the whole day, we have a lot of the fantastic metaverse volumes and keynote speeches, and they invited a lot of outstanding entrepreneurs and scholars to talk about like the technologies and all the problems or issues or the progress in metaverse. And I'm like very glad to host the last but not least panel to kind of have a reflection and throw back on metaverse and like what indeed is metaverse and what's the relationship between it and human society. And so first of all, I'm super honored to invite Alvin Wang to give us the Albany speech. So Alvin is the president of the HTC China and the pioneer in metaverse and VR. Because of he's now in the States and wouldn't be able to join because of a time zones, he will give us the speech in the form of a clip. So we move Joel back. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. This is Alvin Graylin. I'm the China president for HTC. Thank you very much for inviting me to join and open this very interesting panel on whether metaverse will become a dystopian or utopian future for us. I think it's actually a very important subject that we should be talking about and something that we should prepare for so that we actually get the result that we're looking for. And thank you very much, Julie, for inviting me to speak here. Unfortunately, because I'm not in China, I can only give you guys a quick video. But I guess my view of this is even though all the books that the metaverse is based on, or the Oasis or the Matrix, all these books and movies depict a dystopian future and a dystopian physical real world where now to escape it, they go into this virtual world. I feel like we should be targeting for an alternate future, a future where we have a utopian physical world and a utopian virtual world. And I think it's actually quite possible. And it's important that we think about the impact of this technology to help actually bring an outcome for a better physical world. For instance, I think by having a virtual open world that the entire world can connect to, or virtual universe that the entire world can connect to, it actually will bring more equality because now we are no longer judged by the color of our skin or our age or our wealth, and it's really more about our ability to create, our ability to innovate, and our ability to think that will be how people will judge us and how people will value us. Additionally, because of the ability of a metaverse society to limit the need to go out, the need to drive, the need to have an office, the need to do business travel, it actually will hopefully help us reduce the impact that we've had over the last century in terms of the carbon emissions into the atmosphere, and maybe help to bring it to a better state, over time. And I think, also the fact that we no longer need offices probably in the future, and it actually frees up a lot of real estate to allow real estate prices to come down, to allow more people to be able to afford quality housing. So there's actually a lot of benefits that can come from having this type of a future. Additionally, by having a world where we spend most of our time in a virtual environment, we actually need to buy less physical goods and have less waste. That also, will just help the environment, and also I guess reduce the need to use wealth and possessions as a way to give us our own status or to compare versus other people. So again, a lot of things that I think will have long-term benefits, and I hope the rest of your panel will be very successful, and I'm sure you're going to have some very interesting discussions. I'm sorry I won't be able to be there to see it in person, but yeah, I'm sure everything will be great, and look forward to watching the video when it's done. Thanks, guys. Have a great event.
Okay, so thank you very much for the clip. And so now we are going to start our main topic. So Metaverse as an apocalypse of digital revolution. Will Metaverse bring humanity utopia or dystopia? Which is our main topic. And I think I should also introduce our honorable guests in English again. Seems like they're all like very outstanding and prestigious. So first of all, let's us introduce Mr. Edgar Perez, who is the former vice president at Citigroup and also the senior consultant with IBM and a keynote speaker in 5G, AI technology, and Metaverse. Also, Mr. Max Song, who is the founder and CEO of Project Arc and Carbon Base. He is also an expert in blockchain and carbon neutrality, and he was selected as the Forbes 30 under 30 this year. Also, Miss Julia Chen. She is a Harvard alumni and now working as the head of marketing and communication of RCT AI, which is a leading AI technology company that provides AI solutions to the game industry and building the true metaverse with the AI-generated content. And also Mr. Ricky Huang, who is the debate coach of the Oxford Union at Oxford University, and he is an outstanding professional debater shining global debate competitions. So back to our main topic. So just feel like Metaverse is now everywhere. So every day we can hear about like Metaverse campaigns, advertisements, volumes, or speeches. So it just seems that the era has been arriving and make a big deal to our daily life worldwide. So we kind of describe it as the next digital revolution. So like literally everything can be Metaverse. And also like these days, Mark Zuckerberg changed the name of Facebook to Meta to reflect its focus on building the Metaverse. So, and I've heard that yesterday, he opens up the virtual space called like Horizon World to all the like players in the US and Canada. So now we think of like Metaverse. Some people said it seems like an utopia to like ordinary people. So as we all know, like we might also like watch a lot of films like Free Guys. So so Metaverse creates a virtual world, and there you can have like limitedness, like resources, and you can do whatever you want. And even if you are nobody in real life, you can be the superhero and the protagonist in that world. But like also like people just saying that it's just a fantasy. So like people are suspecting that like this frontier of technological creation will serve as a dark dystopian. Like I know like the game, the big name game like Roblox, it's dominated by young users, as like 70% of the users are under the age of 16. And only 14% of the users are over like 25 years old. So let's just imagine like these days there are so many voices and like social media saying like of like those photos of those kids in the playground or beaches. They're not just playing with other kids, but rather they're just wearing those like VR glasses and playing Roblox. So there are people like doubting that those big exclusive like Facebook or Tesla, they are kind of building up a metaverse world on purpose of like maybe mind control, physical surveillance, or the capital monopoly. So I'm like really curious about the thoughts of from our uh, panelists. So I really maybe jump into the topic. Maybe first let's welcome Mr. Edgar, like Mr. Perez. Uh, what's your
Thank
opinion
you.
about this subject?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for the invitation. What we know about the metaverse is that it is indeed the future of interactivity. When you think about the past, of course, we were looking at the mobile phones. Before that, the desktop platforms. And then now we're looking at the metaverse. So really, it's the natural evolution. However, we're now talking about metaverse because basically Facebook decided to change its name. Guess what? There are many other companies that are way ahead in this game. You mentioned Roblox. That's just one of them. When you think about Fortnite, for example, they already have 360 million people experimenting what the metaverse is going to be from this particular company. However, that's not a full promise. For the full promise to become a reality, we'll need to still wait for around 10 years when all these different offerings from many different companies will become interconnected. So people will be able to seamlessly move from the physical world to the virtual world, and in the virtual world to be able to transfer their experiences between any of these offerings from many of these companies. It could be any of the successful companies today, or perhaps it could be even a new company that we haven't heard of. So the future it is coming indeed, but let's not be fooled by how these companies, major companies, are trying to shape the metaverse. We still don't know how this is going to play out, yet it is coming.
Thank you very much, sir, about your wonderful thoughts on metaverse. So I'm just thinking, like, does like Max, do you have any other different thoughts, or do you want to share about your personal experiences based on this topic?
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. So just to echo what Edgar is saying, I think that's the interesting thing about the internet economy in China is that most entrepreneurs you talk to feel like there are no more opportunities on the consumer side of reaching people. And it's because the cost of user acquisition is so expensive that it is prohibitively expensive for them to actually create something that people want to use. But in the metaverse sort of concept, the types of things happening on the internet is basically free association into self-organizing communities. And then people start contributing their own creativity and also contribution to the group. And we saw this more recently with a few of the DAOs that have been forming, especially this one phenomenon of the Constitution DAO, where 17,000 people came together in about 5 days for a very specific goal. So to me, I think the ability for people to actually find each other based on common interests in the digital space and then to start creating value together is actually the heart of the entire concept of metaverse, beyond all the labels we attach to it from the technology or the marketing hype. And then the other side I would say is, especially after COVID, the people's desire to relate to one another and actually find common interest is stronger than ever, because you can't find people so easily in the offline world anymore. And this is why Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces have become so popular. What I hope we can do with the direction where the metaverse sort of possibility is going is actually to promote more of these serendipitous encounters and have these people work on creative projects together. And I'll stop here, but I do want to highlight one other comment, which is I believe that it is important to distinguish between the rules of engagement in the traditional world and in the what people call Web 2 world, and then the rules of engagement in the Web 3 world. And so if we have a chance, maybe we can come back to that topic slightly later in the panel.
Okay, that sounds like brilliant and thought-provoking. We'll go back to that topic again later after we introduce the other two panelists, I guess. So first, maybe Julia, would you please go ahead?
Hi guys, this is Julia here. I'm currently head of marketing at a blockchain GameFi game called Delysium. We are backed by RCTAI. And yeah, thoughts on topics about the metaverse and what's going to come up. So we're in a very interesting vertical where we're not just metaverse, but we're also part of the blockchain, crypto, decentralized metaverse. Now, there's many different ways people would define metaverse, many people who argue what is metaverse, what isn't metaverse. Now, we really think any narrative that is, synchronized and that has, an ecosystem itself could be called a metaverse. Like Harry Potter could be a metaverse, Marvel is a metaverse, right? But I'm speaking on behalf of a very specific type of metaverse that is etched in between the blockchain decentralized universe. And so, do I think it is something that will bring a utopia or a dystopia is a very interesting question. Just yesterday, we were going through and deciding whether or not we wanted to encourage pornography in our game, because our game is a cyberpunk 2077-esque game. That heated debate went on for a very long time, and then we ultimately decided that our characters are not going to have genders, and we're going to let the crowd decide amongst themselves what they wish to do among that. It is a dark and troublesome line in which how you decide to walk, but like the advancement of every technology, I think we are open to everything. Whether or not that will appeal to man's worst desires is something that I think is probably going to come up in our discussion today. But as people who are making headway first into the space and are trying to establish, I think, the first principle rules, like Max is saying, we absolutely want to encourage all creativity and encourage everyone's voice, even if that means coming into play with some potentially negative consequences. So yeah, I'm very excited to continue to talk about this topic with everyone. I'm excited to hear about what everyone has to bring to the table from your different perspectives looking at metaverse, and I hope to engage in some cool conversations today.
Wow, that's really thought-provoking and fun as well. So yeah, I think we will go dig into the such topic about the assets of engagement and the differences of why we are why we have various identities in both Web3 and the reality world, what identity or what life we were gonna choose, or who is defining or who is going to restraining our lifestyle in both in reality or virtual life. So next, let's welcome Ricky. Please go ahead.
Right. So I'm going to deviate a little bit away from the industry discussion and head off more to the philosophical realm a little bit. I think the utopian side of this is that it's just a state of nature that is not chained by any physical limitation or any exogenous factors, right? I think it is a form of true autonomy that is just unimaginable to anyone before this, because you're just who you want to be and all the experiences that you want to aggregate and all the things that you want to experience. But I guess the first dystopic thing is the one that you just mentioned, Julie, is I think there are meta-ethical questions on who is there to govern the rules within metaverse and what are the limitations we are going to impose upon big tech or upon the autonomy of individuals. But the second question is that even if metaverse is, let's say, fully utopic, that it gives people what it wants, there exists philosophical questions on how meaningful this is. So namely, Robert Nozick, who is a professor at Harvard in 1970s, proposed a thought experiment of what we call the experience machine, which essentially is a machine that will give you any positive experience, any positive utility once you step into it. And then there is a philosophical question on whether or not this almost hedonic treadmill of utility is actually what people want. Because there is also a powerful intuition that people do not want to step into that machine, that people find things that extend beyond utility calculus and about how we choose to shape our current life that seems like an almost moral imperative to people, that we stick to reality.
Okay, thank you, Ricky. So it's always the high quality of debate from your side, as far as I'm concerned. So I feel thanks all for the first round of the panelists, like outstanding thoughts. And I'm just thinking like maybe we should like dig into one point. So maybe like just as Max said, maybe we can talk maybe thoroughly about like how like the role of like the government and the capital play in the metaverse world. And like so maybe we can make some reflections or like related to the other topic that we just mentioned before. So Max.
Yeah, so one of the topics that we've been thinking a lot about is actually how do we actually create a Bill of Rights for the participants in the metaverse, right? So a lot of the companies are now very actively trying to participate. They're going to design their own ecosystems. Some of it are private owned, other ones are owned by the public, or the ones are built actually out of people themselves. And the cultural phenomenon recently is that there's a great article published called the Declaration of Interdependence on the Internet, which is a sort of remark to the Declaration of Independence that was used as a founding document for the United States. But instead of saying that they were going to leave the United Kingdom, this new document says that the people who live on the internet actually fundamentally are related to one another, and you need each other actually to survive. And I think that was a really interesting, way of relating to the cultural DNA. So with a few friends, we've been actually brainstorming an idea of a metaverse constitution, specifically a Bill of Rights, right? What are the fundamental rights for the citizens who exist on the metaverse, and how are they different than the rights that would exist on a personal basis if you're, living in a country? And here's 3 ideas. This is not a, exhaustive list. The first one is the ability to have sovereignty over your own data. This actually is a huge statement because the entire business model of all of the major companies, from Tencent to Alibaba to Google, actually depends on selling your data. And so if you have a metaverse concept where you say, I own my own data as the beginning building block, it changes the way that people can do business with you. That's one. The second one is the ability to actually join and leave different online communities at your own choice. So there's a really powerful essay called Voice and Exit, which talks about the ways that political organizations get reformed. And the 2 ways you theoretically do it is voice, where you try to participate, either peacefully or unpeacefully inside the system, or exit, where you actually leave. So the United States was actually built on exit because all the people who were suffering persecution in Europe basically just got on boats and moved somewhere else. And so in the metaverse, it's much easier to leave because you just, log out of your MetaMask account or something else, and then you're now somewhere else, which actually is not true in traditional Web 2, where all of your data is still stored by Google or Facebook or your email accounts. And then the final one is the ability to do self-expression, right? There's a lot of discrimination in the world today based on your race, your color, your gender. So part of the new metaverse actually is the ability for you to choose who you want to be, and the ability to sort of, to sort of really craft yourself. And I think that can be a very powerful opening for people's creativity. So I'm curious to hear other people's opinions as well. I think you guys have many of your own ideas of what good and bad looks like on this Bill of Rights. But I personally believe that by working on such a document, we actually can steer the evolution away from the dystopian because we're consciously designing it. The problem with the internet is that although it was born on really good ideas, there was no one really holding the internet builders accountable for the power that they were using. And now we have a chance to do a version 2.0. So we should try to be more thoughtful this time around.
Thank you very much, Max. That sounds actually very progressive and practical. So I knew that Max is also like an expert in like blockchain. So in blockchain, every day we just talking about the decentralization. And so I think I'm really expecting like one day, like in metaverse world, we can have such a decentralized thing. So we can have an identity like whatever, like not based on the race, gender, class we already have in our virtual life. And we like no matter of the in sexuality, like we are just ourselves as the like avatar or like ourselves, like whatever we define. So thank you again, Max. So does the other panelists have other thoughts? So you can just jump in. So okay, so we go first, Julia, and then Mr. Perez.
Okay, cool. So it's really interesting that Max was bringing up rights, because I was just thinking about this the other day. Now, I'm not thinking, I don't necessarily want to add this to the Bill of Rights necessarily. I'm thinking about maybe, but I don't know how this would be achieved. But something that was really getting to me the other day while thinking about, being on crypto Twitter and then being on a whole bunch of different, discords and like that kind of stuff. And it really got to me how if I wanted to just like change who I was, or if I wanted to disappear, or if I wanted to not be held responsible for the things I was saying, it's extraordinarily hard. Like on Twitter, it's very easy to like get someone's tweet from like years and years back, and then you make another comment, be like, oh, look what you said like, 3 or 5 years ago. And so that led me to the thought about the right to be forgotten. I actually think that's as we move into when we like shatter our digital and identity presence all over the internet, leaving trails of who we are across all the places that we've been. The web does not forget. And so one of the things that I almost think is very merciful is the right for an individual to be able to wipe their presence. Because a lot of times right now we can wipe our presence, but we don't really wipe our presence. So if there was a way for us moving into the metaverse to truly guarantee that we have the right to be forgotten, that even like a right to die, right? In some points where you can choose to end your presence or choose to not be responsible, I think that puts the responsibility you have to have over your actions in the metaverse, over everything you say, under a whole new light. Because right now in real life, I'm mostly not responsible for things I say. Like I say it and it's gone. But on the internet, it's not like that. Internet, they can get everything that you've said for the past 2 or 3 years of life. It's almost in a way whereas you're not allowed to change, right? You're not allowed to change your opinions. You're not allowed to grow even. That would be sinful, as in you are going to be contradicting who you used to be, which, is, again, it requires very high standards for other people to understand and to embrace that. So that was something I wanted to add on to Max's idea. I think a right to be forgotten would be a really cool thing to add on to the Bill of Rights, regardless of how you would actually achieve that, right? Because the more hold you have over your own data, the less other people can do with it. And so if there's something happened to you and you didn't wipe it or whatever, then it would always be there permanently. So I guess that is the negative side of the blade that comes with having more ownership and having more responsibility over everything, is that you are truly responsible. Like on a lot of group chats, we see people getting scammed every day, see people getting like hacked, getting their wallets stolen, getting whatever. And that's just something where there's not much you can do about that. And that leads me to my second point, which is on the topic that Julie was talking about where government and capital should lie. On one point on each of those, I think for government, the main discussion when we're talking about metaverse is it centralized or is it decentralized? I think for me, at least, that's the biggest comparison. I think governments are a form of centralized metaverses. They can choose. I think China is trying to adopt using like the digital RMB currency to create a one China, one world type of metaverse, where like we all live under the same ideology. China actually supports blockchain technology, it just doesn't support crypto. And one of the reasons for that is because crypto can make you go crazy, whereas blockchain can be a lot more reined in and utilized in a way that you want it to utilize. So the same way that China is probably going to be using Web3 technology for more control, a lot of other countries in the world are using Web3 technology to be more and more flat and more and more decentralized, to the day where it could be possible where we just don't have governments anymore. And so I think that's something to look forward to in terms of where governance is going to play in. And in terms of capital, I was looking at this today as well. I actually retweeted something along these lines, which is that try to find a way, because right now, for example, when we're doing games, we usually have we send out two tokens. Like first is the utility token, which is the token I use in game, I buy stuff with or whatever. And then the second, I'll release a governance token. So that's like your DAO token. And that is usually made to decide decisions. So who gets to write the Bill of Rights? What is in the Bill of Rights? These are all things that the governance token holders get to decide. And a problem with this is when you tie political power directly linked with economic power, is you could just have a couple of big financial whales come in, and then they just scoop up all of your DAO coins. The conversation that was discovered, that was starting on Twitter, was when there was a whale that moved to remove other people's voting rights, right? Because technically that's possible. If you have more rights in terms of governance tokens, you can remove other people's right to vote permanently. It would take another person to override you to be able to do that. And so that's really dangerous. And so that was very interesting about the degree in which capital gets to weigh in on deciding the new laws of the new world. And a lot of us were talking about, is there a way we can counter that? And there were a lot of people coming up with different ideas on how you can redesign your tokens or redesign your system such that it would automatically like disqualify whales, or it would de-weight them in a way where you don't overwhelmingly, just because of the amount of money you have, get to have all the voting power. So I think those are a couple of issues that I thought was pretty interesting that came up in the past conversations.
Well, thank you very much, Julia. That's like so thought-provoking and like so complete about like what role government and capital is going to play. It's such like a perfect answer, I may say. So next, should we welcome Mr. Perez to give about your thoughts, please?
Thank you. Well, you mentioned the topic of governments. And indeed, when you think about the evolution of the internet, maybe 30 years ago, the people who decided to start the internet dream of an open environment where people would be able to access pretty much the same internet all over any part of the world. Guess what? Over the years, over the decades, actually that changed. And obviously some governments decided to take a different approach to access the populations to different sites of the internet. So now the internet, what used to be a monolithic approach, now it's actually becoming more of a fractured environment with different geographies accessing different websites and basically not allowing people to actually have a common access to the internet as that was the dream before. So if we move from this Web 2.0 to our Web 3.0 that we see with the Metaverse, the ambition there is that the Metaverse is going to be a space that eventually is going to be also this uniform perspective of what the virtual and physical world is going to be. That is the dream. And indeed, that would be the promise. Ideally, if I'm working, let's say, with a metaverse provided by Fortnite, for example, and I'm able to create my avatar there, and I'm able to buy, let's say, my t-shirts, my pants, my toys there, and I'm able to invest money there to get, of course, the digital currency that Fortnite is going to use, and then I decide for some reason to move to another metaverse, I should be able to move all my investments there to another metaverse, and hopefully I don't lose any value out of that. That is the promise of the metaverse. Is that going to become possible in the future? That's what would be definitely faithful to see. I definitely would like to see that in the future, all these different metaverses, which of course are going to be established in different geographies, different continents even, hopefully will have this capability to interconnect. So I should be able to move seamlessly from these different metaverses and be able to use my, let's say if I have a t-shirt from certain brand, I should be able to maintain that t-shirt into another metaverse because I don't want to be spending money into another attire, for example, for my avatar. That is the promise. It would be very beautiful if at the end of the day, we end up with a fractured metaverse. So I'm looking forward to seeing what other panelists also have to think about this particular area.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perez. I'm just thinking like all our panelists are like so outstanding and like brought us like so many thought-provoking opinions on like the metaverse, and like it's like really like in deep, and I think like at first I was just thinking like maybe we just talked about like all those like is metaverse a hyped concept for today, and like what it will like in like related to our daily life, but like truly we talked about the potential of its leading us humanity to a utopia and the dystopia way in a like a binary way, and like as Max even gave us some practical solutions about that. So now leading to so do you guys, I think it's just like we had such a heated discussion over the such topics. So I'm not going to throw up another question. So if the panelists, like if you have the other thoughts, we can just go ahead and continue. So okay. So Ricky, please go ahead. Oh, you're
on
blocking
mute.
mic.
Sorry. So just to talk a little bit about what Max talked about Bill of Rights. Just some conceptions about how legal philosophy is going to be cross-applied in metaverse, right? Because our traditional legal conception of laws is this: action brings harm. We as a society get a moral minimum, and we do some calculations about joint expected value, and we formulate a certain set of imperatives that we deem into laws. Quite an intuitive concept. But the question is that how does this traditional conception of harm translate for metaverse, right? Because there are a lot of action in metaverse that won't bring real actual harm. So if I decide to do a certain set of action that is illegal in the real world, i.e., taking up certain drugs, but if I take it in metaverse, and if I get brain stimulation in metaverse, and if I don't necessarily have my money flow towards any cartel, then what is the exact harm of that action, right? So because a lot of this is in your mind and not even in the physical realm. So then there are legal philosophy questions on where the boundaries of states are in order to change the biopower of an individual, and where does the physical limitation of private realm end? That is to say that if Daddy Zuck treats metaverse as his own private land, how much governmental intervention can happen and should happen in this realm? So for example, for things like Max talked about like self-expression, right? If, let's say, self-expression extends in the realm of discrimination, is that something that should be regulated in metaverse? Or things like consent to data usage, or even illegal data usage, or do things and experience that are illegal in the real world, but thieves don't have third-party harm in metaverse. How do we determine the moral, meta-ethical questions? I think is really important. What we choose to balance, right? Do we balance autonomy, or do we balance existing moral imperatives we have? Well, but the next question is that I think there can be some discussions about how our traditional use of democracy as a regulating tool for a lot of new concepts could be harmed by metaverse, right? So for example, just imagine the power Facebook would have. Even with Facebook, they had Cambridge Analytica. But what would happen if Facebook now is able to use metaverse as a controlled democracy? Is that our traditional answers to the meta ethical questions raised above, which is usually will give people what they want, if we have democracy, is also deeply muddied by the conception of a metaverse. So I think there's a discussion worthy of having of how our traditional legal conceptions, what is right and wrong, translate into this new conception of reality.
Max, do you want to answer?
Yeah, so I think like Ricky mentioned something earlier called the hedonistic imperative, and there's an essay that was written about kind of the thought experiment of if once we get good enough at actually stimulating our own minds, we can just run a wire into our brain, and then we can just use that wire to give us kind of rushes of dopamine, and kind of live in a world where we get to choose how we are rewarded chemically, and because our motivation and our biological basis is mostly still all of the kind of liquid flowing up in this part of your brain, you can actually alter your chemistry, alter your brain chemistry just by running cables through it. But I think the concern around this direction is saying that what if most people find their own fantasy worlds so stimulating, so exciting, and so engaging that they don't need to actually participate in the rest of society? Because dealing with other people is pretty hard. They have feelings. You have to take care of their needs. They also want to self-actualize, and they want to accomplish things for themselves. You have fights, vested interest. If you have a realistic enough world where people can live by themselves, and then they can just interact with everyone who either listens to them or is nice to them all the time, then they get to escape from that entire world. And there are several movies out there talking about the crumbling of society that happens when every person now has the ability to just go and participate in this, personal utopia. And I think that's maybe the potential uninciped consequences of actually giving people a lot of choice. And it comes back, I think, to a deeper question, which is, as a society, are we trying to build a world where we want to move somewhere collectively as a species, or are we trying to actually have people, maximize their personal state of happiness and that actually can maybe be something that is not productive for the groups of society. So I think these are still very much open questions that the designers of these metaverses, the people building these games and building these rules, like however they incentivize the code, however they write it, that's going to actually have really big implications for how society behaves. And I would love to invite Julia as a designer of her upcoming, metaverse universe to talk about some of the pros and cons of how she's thinking about designs for that and what kind of behavior she wants people to try to practice in there.
Yeah, so because we are cyberpunk, so we actually have zero limitations on what people can or cannot do. You can, we have an AI training model that can train and build like components, so like cyber bodies, gear, weapons, parts. And then we also have an AI narrative that can train for storylines and scripts, kind of like you have for character builds in Westworld. And so there's literally nothing stopping you from buying a piece of land, getting some raw materials, sending them to the refinery, building up a wall, and then buying a couple of meta beings, importing some pornography like sets into it, and then putting them in that thing, and then you could just run your own brothel. There's literally nothing stopping you from doing that. And I went over this with the people on my team over and over again. I'm like, are we sure we're gonna make it that easy? They're like, yes, we're not gonna give them genitals, but like they can do whatever they want. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. You're allowed to, like what Ricky said, you're allowed to go ship drugs. You can do whatever you want. You can run around, kill people. And it took me a really long time because I come from an education background. Like my last career was in teaching children critical thinking. Granted, it was still through debate, so it was still a touchy subject. I did have lots of parents come up to me and be like, but I don't want my kid thinking about bad things. And I had to deal with that. But moving into a fully fledged space where all of these creative actions are allowed, even if not encouraged, it was really hard for me to get over. Like the truly hopping on board to the whole, if you want freedom, you're gonna have to embrace all of it. Otherwise, it's not freedom. If you're just like, this is the freedom I'm gonna tell you you're gonna get. That was a really, really hard step for me. But after, getting on board, I guess what the most you can do at this point in time is to hope that human beings will rise to their higher pleasures, right? Like the same way that Plato has spoken about, in that you can experience your lower pleasures all you want, and at a certain point in your life, you're probably going to want to start to rise up towards higher pleasures, things like opera and reading, things that have to delay your satisfaction, and you have to work towards in order to achieve. Going back to what Ricky said, sometimes you don't want the easy way out. And you see that in games, right? In games, players actually want to be challenged. They don't want to just get the treasure box. They want to make it near impossible to get it, but still be able to get it, right? And that's why we think the metaverse is so incredibly empowering. One side angle that I personally have, like my personal stake in this, is that I love the idea of every person being able to have an audience. So I think what is very dramatically sad for me is when you live through life and you realize most people never get to tell their story, or they never feel like their story is heard. If you see like the number of people who go on to like 主播, like live broadcasts, and they like Shali and that kind of stuff, you kind of know, like, for the average Joe, they like, wake up in the morning, they go on like banjuan for a whole day, they come back home, like a wife they hate, and like kids that like screech at them, and like they feel like nobody loves them, and like they go to bed, and like that's just their life on repeat for years and years and years and years. They don't really have a chance to feel, human, feel dignified, feel that they're valued, and that they get to go out and experience things. But in the metaverse, there's no cap on time, there's no cap on resources. You can go and be whoever you want. And I think there's tremendous power behind giving every person an audience, letting them be the center of their own story, not an NPC in the rest of the world, and being able to experience whatever life they want to experience, whatever that may be. And so hopping on to this bandwagon, I have made a firm decision to stand 100% behind support of the metaverse. In fact, specifically behind a decentralized metaverse, which is even crazier because you have zero control over where that's going to go. You can just only hope for the best, and that humanity will rise above itself, and that be able to appeal to its like Rousseauian nature rather than Leviathan nature. But yeah, so that's where we come from in terms of game designers. So when we design the game, we design the very basics. So we design the economic system, we design the tokenomics behind it, we design the basic building blocks that players are going to have to build their world. And then after that happens, we don't know what's going to happen. So for example, in our game, we have different factions, right? So we have one faction that believes the AI is good. We have one faction that believes AI is bad. And then we have another faction that's like free for all. It's possible for one person from one faction to buy a piece of land in the middle of another person's faction. They can that's their free will to do that. At which point they will just probably be attacked as soon as that happens. And there's nothing that we're going to do on our end to prevent that from happening. Like if you end up just doing something really stupid and shooting yourself in the head and just dying immediately upon restart, and in the blockchain world, losing all of your assets that actually are real value, that equate to like real life savings and money, there's nothing we can do about that. So yeah, that's our stance, is that we are totally open to everything. We try to create users as much creation ability as possible, whether that be good or bad. We let the players figure that out themselves. And in terms of our blockchain game, for those of you that are interested in GameFi and might be moving into this space, for most development teams on GameFi teams, we actually move the entire games, all of the decision making, onto those who hold our governance token, usually in a phase of 2 to 3 years. So we literally just build stuff, and then in 2 to 3 years, the players control the game. Like the 3 factions that we originally set out might not even be the 3 factions that are there anymore. Like the treasury that we originally set might actually be the treasury anymore in time to come, depending on where the players take the road. So it is truly exciting. We're very, very excited to see that. And it is crazy the amount of response and the amount of community and how active everybody is. I think it's come to a point in our human development where those that have the power to do so really do want to take what's theirs and stand up for what they believe is their right. And you see them being very active in the community and trying to build the world in which they can truly own what is theirs. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Julia. I'm actually speechless as every time after you're thinking, I'm just thinking the initial thoughts from a game designer or a metaverse builder is just to maybe create a fantasy or something meta our universe. So but what it creates and initially what it would become and turns out to our real humanity world is imagine incredibly out of control, or the pace of it is always more fast than people can adopt. So I think because of the time limits, should we quickly wrap up? So maybe every panelist can still have 1 minute to share your thoughts on this topic and to just 1 minute conclusion. Max, would you please go?
Yeah, so I think that there's an incredible opportunity for young people to participate in the design of the rules of engagement. This is what Metaverse is allowing us to think about. As Carbon-based, we're actively trying to build ties between the real world and the physical world. And the Metaverse world. And our kind of crazy idea is that we want to use the exciting opportunities of the Metaverse to actually drive people's behavior in the real world. In the old days, religion did this. Religion told people that if you behaved well, then you get to experience, a beautiful future after you die. And today, we're living through a climate crisis, living through a public health crisis, living through a sort of societal, wealth redistribution crisis. And so for young people, I think what we want to do is we want to say, if you behave well in the physical world, then we will give rewards for you in the Metaverse. And so you get to enjoy all of the beautiful stuff happening there. But that also is tied to your ability to make a difference in the physical world. So that's really our kind of philosophy and hope over the next few years.
I remember there was a picture of 5 people reading a newspaper. It was a dated picture, maybe 100 years ago. And the same layout was replicated now 100 years later with 5 people also looking at their cell phones, all focused there. The same layout. People still have to go to the bathroom. People still have to eat. So no matter how beautiful the promise of the metaverse is, it's going to be just one component of our lives. We still have to live. We still have to connect person to person with other people, friends, family, relatives, colleagues, and so on. So yes, the promise is there. We expect to spend time there, but let's not assume that that's going to be at all. It's not Ready Player One, where you really want to leave the physical world. It's going to be a seamlessly interaction between these two worlds. So with that, I would definitely appreciate your invitation, and I'm looking forward to more conversations about this beautiful topic. Thank you.
So I think metaverse in principle will be good without the freedom and empowerment. But I think we need to think about how we regulate corporations because we have trouble regulating internet corporations, right? Let's not fall into the same trap. Because Julia believes in people. Empirically, I do not. I do not trust mega corporations who want corrupted democracy, indoctrinated people through algorithms, who will literally control people and will have disproportionate power because they are the one constructing reality and they're the one constructing how people choose to see reality. Because I think the stance I want to take is that we should embrace the opportunity, but there at the same time needs to be a realm of skepticism in how we treat corporations and how we want to view our meta-ethical ethics and how we deal with those questions.
Okay, so I don't know who's listening to this, but if there's like young people and guys are looking for a job, you should hit me up. What can I say? I think everything around you is a metaverse, right? In some aspects, if you really want to get deep about it, your life is just a metaverse. You could be just the brain in like a vat and you don't know about it, right? So it's all just the game. It's huge and it's overwhelming. So if you want to get involved with this new world, just pick something and go for it, right? If you want to pick DeFi, pick DeFi. I want to pick crypto, go crypto. If you want to pick academics, do that. Bye, Max. It's a huge space. You don't need to figure it out. You don't need to define it. You don't need to understand it to get involved, right? The metaverse is this incredible new thing that multiple industries are joining together and trying to really push, I think, a new era, right? It's not dated correctly by saying it's the same as the beginning of the internet age. It's the same as the beginning of discovering oil. Okay, so it is a whole new world with whole new baseline societal mechanisms that you have a chance to get involved with and decide new order in. I think of my role as building the real metaverse, as in when we're building a game, we're creating a self-sufficient ecosystem which people have their value attachment directly related in that game. It functions on its own. People generate revenue, they hire people, they spend their time in there, they're emotionally attached to the friends they meet, they can create things, they write narratives, they become their stories. So I actually think of myself as part of a new wave of people who are trying to create real metaverses with real content that leave you in there and give you an opportunity to discover yourself and the world around you. And so we think this is not just an entertainment experience, it's not just a social experience, it is very likely the next phase in the new age of life. And so if you're listening to this, and you're looking for a job, or if you're not looking for a job, but you like us, come to RCTAI, come find me at Delysium. We're building some really, really cool stuff. I hope to see and talk to you guys soon.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much for our wonderful panelists and of their wonderful speeches. I was wow, it's mind-blowing and really my pleasure to host this roundtable. And to wrap up, because of the time limit today, we only have 1 hour to discuss about this topic, and we didn't even maybe truly define what is utopia or dystopia, but whatever. I think everyone now today or maybe already got an answer in the roundtable. What we the content that we didn't have the time to elaborate it, we might to spread it on our social media or later in the other platform. So for this topic, what I'm truly believe is it's not the first time that we have the brand new technology or brand new concept. Before that, we already have 5G, AI, AR, or blockchain, and recently the NFT. So every time it's just so trendy. So I'm just thinking is and will always be all those like technological changes and progress in the future. So I just don't think like those progress are merely just mean the improvement our human productivity, but it actually like inflect like subconsciously like humans desire. So like just like sometimes we can choose to go somewhere by ferry or the bus, but like we just choose ferry because we want to. So I think like technology is just not a tool, but something far beyond. So I'm just thinking like metaverse is never a height contact. So for the capital markets or those trains. So I think besides the instrumental rationality, like humans have chosen those technologies out of like because they wills to maybe fulfill their inner desires and to maybe build a fantasy in the definition. So I'm just thinking like technology is never purely for developmental means. It contains the forward and some better directions of our like human society and the apocalypse. So I think, well, the Metaverse Bring Humanity Utopia or Dystopia, I think this, to make it more clear and deeper, the question may be like how humans will and are dealing with the technical progress and remain humanity in a social, cultural, political, and historical rubric. So I think that's the end of our roundtable, and I hope everyone can enjoy our like it's I've like really honored and grateful that we can have a speech together and talk about such an interesting topic. So
Thanks,
thank you,
Julie.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Nice to meet y'all.